Hello, welcome to this episode of Living Off the Grid in the City. Today is the 23rd of March, 2023. I want to take today's episode, this should be a short episode, to describe and define what the grid actually is, what I call the grid. I have defined it in the past. It's just that there have been various definitions, various explanations for what the grid is, how it works, and I want to dedicate a whole show, however short it may be, to defining it and telling you exactly what I think it is, what I call the grid. Okay, the grid is basically what a home, what a apartment building or apartments, place, separate apartments for a person or family, or a business building, what those dwellings, what those buildings are hooked up to get their 1, energy, 2, communication, and 3, water and sewer. So those 3 main things are the part of the grid. The grid is mandatory. The grid is compulsory in many instances, if not most. The grid is an obligation in many instances, if not most. And that is where I believe the grid is problematic and detrimental to most people. It is harmful to people's economy, people's finances, and their very health and even safety in some parts of the world are harmed by the grid. So the grid, the 3 things, going back to the 3 things I mentioned, which is energy or power, water and sewer, and communication. These things are commonly accepted and widely encouraged to the point of coercion, that these things are automatically hooked up to any home, whether it's new, whether it's existing, whether it's changing tenants or inhabitants or owners. You are expected and highly encouraged and even coerced to have these 3 things connected, paid for, and maintained in your home, in your place of living, in your dwelling, whatever it may be, and even in your business, at your office. In fact, everywhere you go, whether it's a residential or commercial or industrial location or building or facility, you are expected, if you are in any way responsible for that location, you are expected to keep up those systems running, those systems paid, and those systems maintained and on at all times. And this is again mandatory. You have very little, if any, choice about these, and that's the problem. That is that obligation, that lack of choice, that compulsory nature of these systems is what the problem is with the grid, what the harm is, because it is despotic, it is dictatorial, it is not freedom, it is bondage. It is the very definition of bondage. So just to expand a little bit on what those 3 things, the electric, the communication, and the water and sewage. The electric, of course, is your good old electric company, power company, the one that you are very familiar with, getting a monthly bill, the one that you are familiar with from the game of Monopoly. The electric company is your partner for life, from birth to death. We all know the electric company. As children, we grow up hearing about it. As adults, the minute we become independent and we take charge of our finances, our lives, and move out into our own place, apartment, house, or whatever other living arrangements, you are likely to experience your first relationship, which is with a power company. That is basically a marriage for life. You will have very little, if any, choice to get out of that relationship, and that is a problem. Anything forced, anything that is arm twisting, anything that you are held at elbow to a wall, cannot be good, cannot be healthy, cannot be the best thing for anyone. So that is the relationship that you are taught to have with your power company, one of perpetual existence. Again, for the most part, most locations are like this, where you have a monopolistic company that they are the only company available for you to purchase services from, power from. And this is, again, a harm, a disadvantage, because you have no choice to replace that company, to end your contract with that company so you can get another, because you really cannot and should not exit modern society by cutting ties with your power company, and your life changes so dramatically by not having power, when power is all around you, that it is, honestly, a harmful thing to do for most people. So most people just don't even think about doing such thing. And the power company knows this, and they take plenty of advantage of this by, one, jacking up their prices permanently and consistently, and by treating you and doing business with you as the situation that they know exists, a situation that is more like slave and master, or owner and servants. You, of course, the customer, being the servant, serving money at the end of every month and getting the very minimum service and customer service, and the very minimum, if any, care and respect from your power company. Your power company really does not care much about you, respect you much, and they act and behave just in that manner. All you have to do to find out is give them a call and ask them about your power bill. Why is it so high, and why are they always raising their prices without you knowing or voting about it or having your input about it at all? And they will gladly remind you that basically you have no say, you have no input into what goes on with the power company, their prices, what they charge, what they do, what other fees they insert in your power bill that have very little to do with power. And that is because they have a massive amount of power over you. They have political power over your city, your county, region, states, even over the nation. When we look at the power as an industry as a whole. And again, that is the power company, the electric company that we all have come to know. We have all been accustomed to be abused and used and battered by the power or electric company, to the point that most of us are just numb to it, to the point that most of us are just accustomed and used to the punishment so much that we just take it. We just don't even complain about it anymore. We have found out, some of us earlier, some of us later, we have found out that it is pointless, it is almost futile to complain, to attempt to make noise about it, to attempt to have them listen, because they really are not interested in listening to you. They may stay with you on the phone. The rep from the call center that has very little to do with what the power company does is set up there so she or he could listen to you calmly and attempt to sympathize with you and calm you down and tell you that yes, I too go through the same thing you do sometimes. But ultimately they will put the blame on you. Ultimately they will just tell you a few tips of how to save energy, as if you are at fault, you are the one responsible for the energy charges that they have come up with to insert into your power bill, and as if you are responsible for the rates that they themselves have set up. And the minute you go a bit over your average yearly usage, you are severely punished with high charges and increasing rates as you use the energy a bit more throughout the year. This is just the case. The power company is there even before you move into your new home or to your new place, your new apartments. The power meter is there waiting for you. Without question, you are expected to transfer whatever power service the last owner had to you. Without question, you are expected to keep that power meter and its power, the services from the power company. Without question, you are expected to pay for that power bill. Let me remind you, the power company, for the most part, in most areas here in the United States, are for-profit private corporations ran as businesses like they are. And they have board members, they have CEOs, they have investors that they look out for. They look out to make profit from the services they provide, which is selling you power. They are there to grow by demand and by requirement from their investors. They need that yearly growth. Therefore, those hikes that you see every few months and every year in your power bill, they are expected to grow not only financially, but also physically. They are expected to expand, to get more customers, to sell more energy, to produce more energy. Therefore, they are really at heart not interested in you saving energy. That's why there are no billboards on how to save energy. That's why there are no advertisements on TV on how to save energy. That's why when they tell you about saving energy, they tell you to change out your light bulbs to LED, and they tell you to set your AC or heat at a certain temperature. But they really don't tell you real ways to save energy, because they're really not interested in doing so. They actually encourage you to use more energy by trading, as they have campaigns all over the place, by trading your water heater. Not your electric water heater that's using tons of energy in your home. They want to trade your natural gas or propane water heater for an electric one. Thus, proving my point that they are looking to expand. They're looking to sell more energy. Therefore, they're looking for you as a customer to use more energy. That's why they want that electric water heater in your home. They'll even give you one for free. Make the trade and let you have it for free, because they know that the bills are gonna pay for themselves. Are gonna pay for that water heater on their own. The higher bills that you will have from that point on. They will even come in and install it for you. I have seen those campaigns where they have these electric water heaters being brought to your home, and they'll happily take out, uninstall your gas or propane water heater, even free installation and free appliance. So they're not really, again, interested in you saving energy. The power company, again, is there as a permanent fixture in your home. Your home, as I've heard from the architect from the Earth Ships, I believe, is an architect that builds self-sufficient homes. Your home is usually on life support. Your home is on life support because it is connected, as a human, as a person would be on life support, to external sources of power. It is really not powered or maintained sufficiently, self-sufficiently, meaning it doesn't have the capability, and for the most part, most homes don't have the capability to generate power, and use that power that it generates, or to even generate power from renewable local sources. It depends on sources that are often imported from many hundreds of miles, if not thousands of miles away. It uses power that is dirty, that is polluting, that causes all kinds of conflict and war throughout the world, that causes all kinds of death and destruction for fauna, for animal and plant life all throughout the world. It destroys habitats, forests. It has caused catastrophes out in the sea, creating marine and water disasters on enormous and unimaginable scales. There have been spills all over the world. Just about every decade gets a major oil spill, if not every year, if we count the not so popular or not so much publicized oil spills or gas spills, or other kind of spill that have caused all kinds of problems, all kinds of destruction, all kinds of problems with health, human health. Animals are killed by the hundreds of thousands many times, and plants, not to mention plants and the actual soil environment that is harmed. These problems are often not public, not publicized enough, not made aware in the public realm, and they are often ignored. But they are nevertheless major problems that cause a lot of death. Also, the extraction of these fossil fuels that the power company uses, including coal, cause many, many hundreds of thousands of injuries, health and lung injuries, debilitating disease, debilitating problems, health problems, and disabilities. Mining for coal is among the most hazardous things, jobs out there for anyone, causing all kinds of health issues, including black lung disease and other diseases, respiratory diseases. So the workers, are at risk that work in these industries, and we are 100% supporting and funding these operations by having our electric power, our electric services on in our homes. And we are supporting all the destruction and death that those industries bring to the areas where they extract, to the areas where it is refined. There are many, many accidents, fires, explosions. There are many hazardous aspects to those types of jobs. And that is something that we must consider. Not to mention the utter pollution, the utter problems that it's bringing to our environment, to the climate, to global warming, to the entire world, causing all kinds of problems, havoc, with storms, with stronger storms, with flooding, with cold spells, with hot heat waves, etc. So the problems brought over by fossil fuels is just endless. So, other than power, another parts of the grid is water and sewer. I'm going to bundle up water and sewer because they are usually built together. Commonly, in many areas, are built together. They are usually owned by whether it's the city, the county, the state, in I guess in certain cases, not too many, I don't believe. It's mainly the city and the county, or the county, that owns and runs and bills for the water service. The water service is also growingly owned and ran and built by private corporations. Most definitely, most likely, your bill is going to be handled and processed by private corporations, for-profit private corporations. The facilities, the equipment, the infrastructure may be owned and ran by a governmental body, as your city or county, but the actual billing and perhaps even other aspects of your water service or sewer service may be owned and ran by private corporations, especially the billing of it. So even that service, which is widely accepted to be public, is increasingly being private, for profit and private. Therefore, the water cost, the service for bringing your water to your home is increasingly expensive, increasingly more expensive, and that trend of it going up in price is just perpetual. It is permanent. It is always going up. In some areas, water and sewer are quite expensive. Per my own experience, I used to live in the South Florida area, and water and sewer in an apartment used to be close to $100 per month. It was insane. It was probably my third highest bill, apart from my power bill and the rent, and I was outraged at this cost. I guess the apartment building gets a big bill from the water company, and they in turn charge each tenant for the water service. And the water service, per my experience, and many people that I have talked to about this also say the same, that in many areas the water is just expensive and not affordable. Something as precious and as basic to life and health as water, a commodity that should be free everywhere, that should be readily and freely available to everybody that lives in every area. It is now in many areas an expensive and unaffordable commodity, a service that those with money, those with access to money have and are able to keep. Water companies, water treatment and delivery institutions or government facilities, they have drive-thrus to allow people to come in and pay for their water often, and they expect this late, often with fees, often with many tacked on charges to punish you for being late, for not having the money to pay for your life-giving water. This is beyond despotism. This is beyond dictatorships. This is the definition of oppression. This is the definition of abuse by a company that literally holds life in their hands, holds the key to life, that hold the ability for you to become and stay healthy. The access to clean water is as basic almost as access to air and food. And this is just a travesty, a disaster that companies are taking advantage. They're being allowed to take advantage of having this power to where they can turn off your spigot, they can turn off your tap, and have you basically go thirsty until you pay. I could not think of a more cruel and draconian way to make someone pay, to force someone's hand, to twist somebody's arm to pay. This is cruel and unusual punishment, and it should be utterly illegal. It should be utterly not accepted in society, and yet it is. Many people hurt when they have to pay their water bill. Complaints. They are stressed. They are concerned. They are disturbed to find themselves paying a high percentage of their income, which may be very low. Their income may be low, yet their bills may be a huge percentage of their income, even 10% or more, in these bills, especially something as essential as water. And again, corporations, many of them for profit, are increasingly being involved. Some areas have even sold the entirety of the water production or processing. No one produces water. Water is here, has been here, and yet they have found ways to control the sources of water, to privatize many sources of water, to sell sources of water, to ensure that they are the only ones with access and with the keys to clean sources of water, and every other source is questionable at best, or polluted and utterly dirty at worst and harmful. So the corruption, the greed, the avarice, and all of the things, negative things that come with it, have invaded even this industry, the water and sewer industry, which very much have you where they want you, which very much have you by the balls and whatever else you may be very sensitive to. And this is just the case. This is just the world where we live, and that is why I consider your water and sewer service part of that grid, the same grid that it is riddled with, again, avarice, is riddled with that greed that basically makes people cruel, makes people indifferent about your situation, about anyone else's situation but their own, makes them extremely selfish, makes them extremely self-centered, to the point where they will allow you to go sick and perhaps die if you don't have the money to pay for the services that they hold back, that they call themselves owners of. No one, to my knowledge, owns any lake. No one, to my knowledge, owns any river. They did not create it. They could not create it. No one, to my knowledge, has made water in a laboratory or anything. Water has been here in the seas and the rivers and creeks and lakes and underwater fissures and reservoirs, or underground fissures and reservoirs. No one put those there. No one maintains those. They may clean the water a little bit, filter it, pass it through a few socks and cotton balls, and call it clean. But water has been there. Clean water exists all over the earth, and people cannot say that they own any of that water. Water belongs to everyone, not excluding animals, not excluding the trees and the vegetation around it. So no one can call themselves the owners or masters of a certain body of water. That should just not be the case. Unfortunately, we live in a world that has been allowed by us, by others, by our brethren, by our community, and that must stop. Water should be completely and permanently free and accessible by everyone, free. So that is just where you should start. That's where our conversation should start, with water and sewer being utterly free services. Anything other than that, I really don't want to hear about it, and I will fight until the last breath I take to basically attempt to bring others to this light, to this side, to this knowledge where, they should not be paying for water. Yes, it costs money to clean water. Yes, it costs money to deliver water. But it is not nearly the money that you are and I are being charged at this moment. It is not nowhere near that amount that it should cost to deliver or clean water. Even then, when you are, even then, if you are just charged the price for the delivery and the cleaning, even then, that should not be the case. It should be the case where cities and communities have evolved and grown to the point where a service and a element as critical and as basic as water should not be held back to anyone, from anyone, especially depending on their income, especially if you holding that critical resource back. It is based on that person's amount of money or wealth or income level. It should not be based on that, whether you get cleaner water or better water or not. You should get clean water no matter who you are, no matter what you do, where you come from, how you look like, what ethnicity you are, what income level you are, how many millions or pennies you have. It does and it should not matter. And unfortunately, again, we live in a backward world. We live in an upside down world where this is exactly the case. You are being judged in how well you have done with your finances, and you are being held from clean water, or clean water is being held from you, depending on this very stupid and ludicrous factor: wealth, background, ethnicity, what town you come from. All those factors are being taken into consideration, into account, unfortunately, for your access to clean water. And that is, my friend, why I say this service is also part of that harmful, monstrous, and corrupted grid that I advocate for you and I to get away from, to disconnect from, to find alternatives to. Third and final part of the grid that I will discuss is communication. Communication is essential for human life, for human well-being, for human cooperation, for advancement, for the modern society that we live in. It is essential for our jobs, our work, our careers, our dedication or occupation, as they call it. We cannot perform work without or significant, large-scale work without communicating with others, without cooperating with others. Cooperating with others means, in one way or another, communicating with others. And we have grown to large societies and complex societies where we have to communicate over distances. That's where telephones have come in. That's where, things like the internet have come in, and they have been developed for this very reason: to organize, communicate, cooperate, collaborate, work. All of those things are made possible by, in this modern world, anything outside of a village or a small group requires electronic communication in this day and age, in this society we live in. Computerized electronic communication that requires power, that requires a bill, that requires paying for a bill. You and I were born into this world. At the very least, you were born in the time where telephone service was already a thing, was already something that was pretty much a requirement if you wanted to participate in society. Yes, you had the choice, and you still have somewhat of a choice, if they want to call it that, not to have communication devices or services. But again, like you would if you were to disconnect from electric power, you would be outcasting yourself from modern society. You'll be severely, if not permanently, hindering and even severing or stopping any prospects you may have for work, to do work or have any income, if you have no communication. Without communication, you are hindering yourself to a very isolated. You are limiting yourself to a very low production lifestyle, or low productivity lifestyle, and you are basically parting from anything dealing with efficiency, productivity, cooperation, contribution. You're basically retiring from modern society if you choose not to communicate via electronic devices or long distances. Long distances are as nearby as the next town over. If you recall, even calling the next county or a city even tens of miles away, you were already being charged long distance charges on your phone bill. I recall this from years ago. Now that has changed with cell phone communication, cell phone services. They have finally accepted that long distance should be international calling and not really national calling. And now you can call across the country, everywhere within a nation here in the US, at the same rate as if you would call someone just a few miles away. So if you were to separate yourself from that and not have that capability, you will be hindering yourself very severely, and your finances are going to suffer to the point where you are basically going to go broke eventually, in most cases, of course. And the communication companies know this. They know they have this extreme power over you, over not only every single individual. They don't have a lot of power over an individual, but they know they have power over society as in general, society as a whole. And they also do have power over you as an individual, because you need the service to participate in society, and they know this. The only advantage with communication companies so far is that you do have choices. There is competition. That is exactly what has brought the services to the level that they are now. They are somewhat affordable. They're just barely affordable for most people. Perhaps other than the very bottom, ranks of the economic system, such as the people under poverty or the working poor. Perhaps those people find their cell phone bills quite high. But working middle class people and up usually are quite comfortable with their phone bill or their cell phone bill. However, it is just like water services, perhaps not as much. It is expected. It is not expected still by law for you to have cell phone service, but it is expected from society, from you. It is expected from the job market for you to have a form of communication so they can communicate with you, to hire you for the job, and also to communicate with you during the job. Oftentimes, many companies have gone away from giving you a cell phone for communication because most people already have one and they expect that. Family and friends, they expect you to have a form of communication as well. So it is expected in society, to say the least. You are very much expected to have that and pay for it, and that is a problem. I believe communication is as essential, almost as it is essential to have shelter. Communication, it is almost as essential to have access to your clothing, for protection, for shelter, for dignity. So, and access to work which will pay for your dwelling, your food, and everything else around you. So it should be heavily subsidized by governments, I believe. It should be, in many cases, free. It should be a free service, should be a free access given to you by our society, by our very advanced society that very well has the capability and the funds and the resources and the technology to detach itself from this being a for-profit endeavor and just offer it for free, develop it, keep advancing it for free, and offer the service for free for everyone. If you happen to know about radio communications, it's everywhere, free of charge. Radio communications, no bills involved, no accounts, no monthly charges. And because the technology has been there for many years, decades, closing on 100 years or so. Radio communications, again, is a very old technology. That is what cell phones use, radio frequency, to communicate between each cell phone. Cell phones are nothing but radios or handheld radios that have evolved to use phone numbers, that have evolved to be computerized, to have this computer interface, and they have evolved to be somewhat digital. But the actual signal, the cell phone signal, is still a radio frequency signal that is analog, that is basically transmitted over the air through radio frequency waves, which is a combination of electronic and sound energy. Electronic and magnetic energy. A combination of both, which is propagated through the air, and it is easily picked up by antennas. It is both transmitted by antennas, of course using a transmitter, and received by another antenna using a receiver. That is the basic concept of radio communication over the air. And that is the same technology with a lot more bells and whistles and much more advanced and complex. That is the same technology used in cell phones. And that technology could very well be free. All that is needed is the equipment that it is very easy to use, equipment that is very easy to learn to use, and with rules that are very easy to follow. This could be very easily done. Cell phones and handheld radios that communicate from very long distances are out there. You can purchase radio equipment right now, today, and communicate over very long distances very reliably for free. Free of charge, of course. The equipment does cost money. However, there is no monthly charges for you using the equipment, and that is how it should be. This could be easily developed by communities, societies, nations, states, cities, and there is an existing infrastructure already for two-way communications through radio, whether it's the Citizens Band or CB, whether it's the ham bands, or what they call sometimes amateur radio bands. Bands are nothing but frequency ranges, basically slices of the frequency spectrum, the radio frequency spectrum that are used and that are parceled and are reserved for different power levels. Again, those are different frequencies or ranges of frequencies used for different types of equipment, different type of communication, but they are there, and they could be, people could be allowed to use those for communications. The Citizens Band, it is an example of this. It is a freely available and freely open, it is an open frequency band or range of frequencies that people can use. It is divided into 40 channels, commonly divided into 40 channels, each channel having a certain frequency that you can switch from and to, and all you need is two radios that could transmit and receive, and they should be able to tune into these frequencies and these channels of this Citizens Band, and that way, people can communicate just by the push of a button. Yes, the communications are open and not necessarily private, but this could easily be changed into the system that we now have with cell phone, where you call a number directly and the communication is somewhat, not entirely private. Could be just like that, using radio equipment. It was done with cell phones. It could be done with equipment that is freely available and a service that is freely available. Why do I think communication and these services are harmful and therefore parts of the grid that I'm describing here? Well, the service itself, I don't believe is harmful. Like I said, I believe the service is actually a good for people, for societies. It is something that has basically brought tons of advantages and benefits to all of us. Of course, it has also brought some pain and discomfort and misery in some cases. But communication, for the most part, works for the better and betterment of society and for the good of most. So I believe it to be a good thing, the service itself. Where I see the problem is the amount of money that these companies have been charging for access to the service, a service that is very basic, very critical to have, and very needed. It is very essential, as I just described. And again, these are for-profit companies. These are companies that little by little, but very surely, corrupt. These are companies that little by little, but very surely, attempt to minimize the resources they use and maximize their size and power and their profitability. That is where the problem begins, with having private corporations, private companies own and run these companies. That is a problem, and that is why I believe that these communication companies, cell phone companies, internet service providers, which are a type of communication companies, and other companies that allow you to communicate, are part of the grid. I include entertainment, even though it's mostly a one-way communication. Entertainment is communicating things to you, communicating ideas from artists and actors and companies and providers, entertainment media providers. They're communicating things to you, whether it's ideas, whether it's entertainment, whether it's news, whether it's happenings, whether it's just playing movies, entertainment programs, whether they're communicating jokes and things that are fun to you. So this is a type of communication, and it is something that is so needed in society, especially in modern society, with all the stress and all the problems, that people need to disconnect. People need to relax and watch something to take their mind into realms of fantasy, realms of relaxation, of fun, of exaggerations, of music and dance and shows and all of these other things that take your mind off reality. Basically, people clamor for and basically need this very, very much, and are willing to pay a large amount of money of their income, large percentage of their income towards entertainment. Entertainment is a very large industry, multi-billion-dollar industry, even challenging that of the communication, that of the cell phone and internet industry in size and profitability and the size of the industry. It may be even a bit bigger. Who knows? I am not sure, but I'm sure they are quite similar in size. But entertainment, again, it's another bill that you are very much not expected to have, or not forced to have, like you are forced to have power and water services, but yet you are more or less slightly expected. You're somewhat expected to have some sort of entertainment in your home. You're not going to be outcast from society if you don't have one, if you don't have access to cable TV or those subscription stream TV services that they have now. But you could be looked at with some, concern and some distrust if you choose not to have those services. You are basically looked at as someone that is a bit weird or a bit, different from the average person. And you're going to be looked at with a little bit of distrust, a little bit of, wariness from most other people. And yes, you are somewhat expected to have and pay for these services, and people more often than not do pay very large amounts for these services. And that is another service that I believe to be part of this grid that is harmful to you, harmful to your finances, harmful to your health. In many cases, you are bombarded with so much stupidity, so much fantasy and entertainment and stress and news and bad news and exaggerated news and exaggerated happenings, because these media companies are looking also to grow. So we're picking up a pattern here. The pattern is that for-profit, that growth, perpetual growth paradigm that private corporations here in our modern capitalist society have. That greed, that avarice, that perpetual thirst for money, for more funds, for more finances, more growth, more control, is what the problem is with these companies, whether it be your power or electric company, whether it be your water or sewer company, or whether it be your internet service provider or your cell phone communications provider. They are all parts of this grid, which involves perpetual growth, financial growth, control, financial power over you, a financial grip over you, and a constant drain on you from the hard-earned money that you have managed to earn. Yes, people are expected to have expenses, to spend their money. That's what their money is for. But when you're being abused and being held from developing financially, developing in other ways, having the life that you really want by these companies, by spending time even with your family and friends, when you're being held back from doing all those things, and your time just keeps being drained away, along with your life and your energy and your productivity, it's being drained away from you because of all of these aspects and parts of that grid. Then that's where the problem is. The grid, I believe, is the combination of all these companies and all these charges and all of these controls that they have over you, and they are keeping you from developing your ideas, keeping you from developing in your social life, developing and improving with your family life, with friends, at home, and especially from developing economically, and basically having the funds, having the time, having the capital, having the assets, having the resources to do what you want to do business, to do travel, to build things, to create things, to sell things, to offer services, whatever services you may want to or able to offer to others. You're being held back from all these things because, in very large part, because of these aspects of the grid that are just draining away, again, time, resources, and funds from you. So I hope this description, kind of long-winded, gave you a good idea what I mean when I talk about the grid, and what many others in this topic, they may mean the same. They just don't describe it as much as I have. They probably just briefly scheme over what the grid is. But the grid that most people speak of when they say being off the grid, using alternative energies and alternative technologies, that's what they mean. They mean these companies, for-profit companies that are draining the life out of you. And they could be stopped. You could be separated from them and live life and remain in society, remain a modern participant of society. A participant in modern society. It is possible. It can be done. The technologies are here. It is just the politics that are holding it back. It is just the politics and the people in power that are not allowing you to use these technologies. In many cases, they are creating laws and regulations that are thwarting and limiting and even stopping you from accessing and using these technologies to basically get away from all these payments, all these commitments, all of these contracts, all of these tie-ups from all these companies. Again, it could be done. It has been done. And I do wholeheartedly believe and recommend that it be done by you and as many other people as you can possibly empower to do the same. Thank you very much.